What's going on, guys? Hope you're all doing well. Today I want to talk about the Benchmade Bugout. Sure, I have other knives, but this is the one that I've carried the most in the past year. I've featured it in literally every single EDC update, and it's my favorite knife, so I think it's about time that I got around to giving it a full review. Now, clearly mine's been blinged out a bit. I've got carbon fiber scales, and I've also replaced the screws with blue anodized ones, as you can see here. The carbon fiber scales do have a little bit less flex to them than the stock plastic scales, which I also have here, but as I'll discuss later on, this is mostly going to be a moot point for most people in practice. First, let's quickly talk about value. For some reason, I thought that this knife went for like $100, but apparently the MSRP is actually around $150, which is honestly not a price I can recommend purchasing the Bugout at. To this effect, they're literally using pieces of plastic for the scales, which isn't inherently wrong, of course, but just isn't conducive to what they're asking for it, especially not at $150. So yeah, I'd recommend it at the $100 price point, but I can't recommend paying the butterfly tax for one at $150. As always, I'd highly advise checking out the secondary market as well. Alright, let's dive into the good stuff. There's a couple of things that I really like about the Bugout, and the first is the weight to blade ratio. The Bugout is incredibly lightweight, and the blade also has ample length for the good majority of tasks. And I believe it is a 3.24 inch long blade. I have to check the weight, but I'll throw up the specifications on top, of course, so you guys have a better idea. Now, conversely, my Sebenza's just a little bit too heavy for me to pocket carry consistently, especially when I'm wearing shorts. And then over here is my Dragonfly 2. It's incredibly lightweight as well. Perhaps, I think it's even more lightweight, but the blade just isn't up to par for most things, and I dislike the way that there's this choil here, and it sort of exposes your finger to the blade if you slip on it. Suffice it to say that I think the Bugout's greatest strength for most people will be the balance that it strikes between pocket space and overall utility. The next thing that I'm a fan of is this deep carry pocket clip. As most of you guys know, I'm a college student, so I'd rather keep the fact that I carry a knife sort of on the down low, you know what I mean? Just in general, even when I'm not on campus, I think that this is a really underrated feature. At the end of the day, a knife is a tool for me, and I don't need people misconstruing it as an open threat, basically. So if you're in college or live in an urban environment, a deep carry pocket clip should definitely be on your list of considerations when you're picking a knife. Without a doubt though, my favorite part of the Bugout has to be this axis lock mechanism. This is partially on a functional basis and partially on a it's just flipping fun to flick this thing feeling. From the functional perspective, it's brilliant for several reasons. One, it's very newbie friendly. I'd argue that most people will figure out how to work this axis lock faster than they will some traditional locks like the Spyderco uses and this Sebenza 21 uses. And it's kind of surprising, but that's just how our brains work, especially if you're not familiar with the knife. The second thing that the axis lock has going for it is that it's very safe and you don't have to worry about getting your finger cut, which is definitely a real concern with something like the Spyderco lock mechanism. And in fact, I actually cut my hand the first time that I used the Dragonfly 2. Definitely something to think about if you have less steady hands or you're using your opposite hand. And finally, there's just so many ways you can flick this knife and close it. And I will give you guys a demonstration on camera. Let me move this camera up a bit so that I can capture it. Okay, so yeah, so many ways you can flick this thing open. There's your standard thumb flick. You can use your middle finger to flick it up. And you can also just hold one of these down and flick it out. Whoops, I think I just hit my wall. And you can also use both to flick it up. Anyways, just like you can open it in a bunch of ways, you can also close it in a bunch of unique ways. So the first one is just this, or you can also just hold down both of these, or you can just do one and it will snap back. And as you can see here, something really cool about the axis lock is that it inherently aids in that last bit of travel when you're closing it up. So just to give a demonstration of what I'm talking about, with just a little momentum, this is what it'll do. Yeah, that is pretty freaking cool. It just snaps right back in. And if you want to get that really silky smooth action, I recommend loosening this pivot here just a tiny bit. It makes a huge difference in the action. Okay, that's enough shilling the axis lock mechanism, because at the same time, I'd argue that the axis lock is the Bugout's Achilles heel. With more moving parts to fail, yeah, it's not going to be as reliable as some traditional mechanisms. And a good example is the liner lock mechanism here. There's just so little to go wrong in the liner lock mechanism, but at the same time, of course, you don't get all those cool features that the axis lock gives you access to. And to this effect, there are 2 springs that the axis lock employs, and eventually they will wear out and snap. I have already had to replace one of them. The final drawback for some people will be the blade steel, which is CPM S30V, I believe. This is an upper mid-tier to sort of premium steel, but it could have been better in my opinion. It'll definitely wear out fast if you're chopping up even just cardboard, and I had a coworker who showed me his totally dead dull bug-out blade, which was kind of disgusting to see, honestly. And to this effect, the Bugout's name is sort of a joke. Definitely do not buy the Bugout if you're looking for a survival knife or for anything hard use. But from an EDC standpoint, this is a stellar knife if your knife usage centers mostly around just opening up packages and the occasional cutting task. This is where my usage mostly lies, and heck, I don't think I've ever even sharpened this knife. I mainly went for the carbon fiber scales just for the aesthetics, and because it matches my phone case. And personally, I don't really think you need them to get the same utility out of this knife with the normal plastic scales. But they are sure nice to look at, honestly. As always, I hope you guys found this review informative. If you did, be sure to hit that like button and to subscribe for future content. Thanks for watching, and peace out until next time.